Welcome, everyone. We're just getting started. Going to wait a few seconds as people join the webinar and get connected. So sit tight for just a few minutes, and then we'll get going momentarily. All right, I think just about everyone's made it in. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are really grateful that you're spending your evening here with us. My name is Aaron McGuire, and I'm the Executive Director of Friends of Baxter State Park. And we are thrilled to be hosting this event tonight, which is the second event in our winter webinar series this year. And our event tonight is focused on some important updates to Baxter State Park's reservation system that recently went into effect. So I want to start by welcoming all of our members who are watching tonight. You know who you are. Your support makes events like this possible, and we are so incredibly grateful. If you're not already a member, it's very quick and easy to join on our website at friendsofbaxter.org. There is a Join Us button in the upper right corner of literally every single page on our site. It's hard to miss, and we would love to welcome you to our community of support for the park. I want to offer a particularly warm welcome tonight to the park staff who are in attendance and spending their Wednesday evening here with us, and anyone else watching who is joining one of our events for the first time. We're really glad you're here, and welcome. So before we jump in, just a few quick housekeeping items. This event is in webinar format, which most of you are probably familiar with. But just to recap, you will be able to see and hear the presenters, but no one else can see or hear you. So you don't need to worry if your significant other suddenly decides that it's time to vacuum nearby. None of us will be able to see or hear it. If you have a question, you can simply click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and a window will pop up where you'll be able to type your question. Please feel free to ask a question whenever it occurs to you, but we are going to hold questions for a Q&A session at the end. And because of the topic tonight and because of the level of attendance, we are planning to leave a solid half hour for questions. So you'll have plenty of time to ask your question. We will be sharing some slides this evening. Anytime screen sharing is active, you will have the ability to zoom in or zoom out to fit the content to your own screen. So if you can't see the entire image, you can zoom out. And if you'd like to see more detail or be able to read more easily, you can zoom in. And those controls will appear in a few minutes once we actually start showing some slides. If you need any tech assistance, please reach out in the meeting chat, which is also located at the bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring the chat as well as our development director, Jam. And if you have a tech issue or a question, we will do our best to help. Finally, just a heads up that this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted soon on our YouTube channel. So if you have any friends or family who would benefit from watching it, we'll be sending along a link in a few days where you can watch it afterward. So Baxter State Park, let's get to the topic at hand for this evening. When we think about the park, most of us tend to think about our favorite places. That might be a mountain peak, your favorite fishing hole, swimming spot, scenic viewpoint. It might be the porch of your favorite cabin at Dacey with a cup of coffee in the morning and your feet up. But regardless, of what your favorite place is, there is a very talented team of people involved in making those experiences in the park possible for all of us. And many of us don't ever get to meet those people that make the park function and make all those incredible experiences happen. And there is so much hard work, expertise, planning, thoughtfulness on the part of park staff that make the park function for all of us. And you're going to get to meet two of those staff here tonight. So with that, I'd like to introduce our two presenters tonight. Lori Morrison is the Director of Administrative Services at Baxter State Park. She is part of the park's leadership team and heads up the division of the park that includes the reservations department. Bryan Buhler is the park services manager, and he directly oversees the reservation staff in addition to fielding many thousands of reservations calls each year himself. And Bryan and Lori were both deeply involved in planning the changes and updates to the reservation system that you're going to be hearing about tonight. So the first part of our presentation is going to focus on the big picture and give you a pretty unique view into how the park makes these types of decisions and why these particular changes to the reservation system were made. Then we're going to move on to the details of the changes themselves and wrap up with plenty of time for questions. So just as a reminder, if you're having any tech issues or have any questions for Friend staff, reach out in the chat and we will help. If you have any questions during the presentation, type them into the Q&A and we'll save them for Bryan and Lori at the end. And with that, Bryan and Lori, I'm going to hand it off to both of you.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. And I would like to thank the Friends of Baxter State Park for holding this webinar and allowing us some time to give you some educational materials and insight into some of the recent changes to our reservation processes. And thank all of you who have joined. We were quite overwhelmed by the number of you who wanted to spend the next hour with us. So thank you. I'd first like to introduce myself. I'm Lori Morrison. As Aaron said, I'm the Director of Administrative Services at Baxter State Park. I am a member of the park's leadership team. And in addition to overseeing reservations and customer relations, I provide leadership and hands-on support in the park's finance and budget department, our human resources department, and IT systems and technology. And I'd like to ask my colleague Bryan to introduce himself.
Good evening. So I am Bryan Buhler, the Park Services Manager. I started with Baxter. This is going into my third season with the park. Currently, I oversee the reservations office here at Park Headquarters, the staff at both the Mattagamon and Togue Pond Gatehouse, and the Togue Pond Visitor Center staff. Many of my responsibilities are making sure that customer service is top-notch, that we're addressing the needs of our visitors while still preserving the natural resource which Percival Baxter left to the people of Maine.
Thank you, Bryan.
Yep.
I was hired by the park in January of 2023. And one of the priorities for the park was to address some of the recent and long-term concerns of visitors and to lead meaningful process improvements that would enhance the visitor experience. I was very excited about this. In my first year at the park, I gathered and analyzed visitor feedback and data to spot trends. I collaborated with the director and the leadership team to change the customer relations supervisor position to what is currently the position that Bryan holds, the park services manager. I'd like to say that this change was instrumental to move forward with meaningful process improvements that we'll be sharing tonight. In the early spring of 24, we brought the reservations subcommittee back together, along with Bryan, myself, and Katrina Kincaid, who is our most experienced customer service representative with over 10 years of experience. And if you've called our reservations line, you've likely talked to Katrina. She's a wealth of knowledge, and she's so helpful. Along with us staff, there are 5 advisory committee members on the subcommittee. One of them was on the original subcommittee. Our advisors provide so much historical knowledge and hands-on experience with the park, and they really help to inform our work. The charge of our committee was to review visitor complaints, trends, and propose solutions to improve visitor experience. At the forefront, our primary consideration is always the park's mission, as protecting and enacting the terms of the trust is our primary objective as stewards of Governor Baxter's vision. Over the last 2 years, our committee has focused on data and visitor experience feedback. We studied complaints in areas of concerns. We looked at reservation statistics, patterns. We balanced those with park rules and regulations. We did interviews with the public, with staff, and advisors, and we looked at processes used by other park systems. Our findings led us to 3 priority areas for improvement. The first, which was done last season, was to address confusion and misuse of the day use parking reservation system. And for this season, to address reservations that allow for unfair extensions, or what Bryan will later explain further as leapfrogging, and to address phone congestion issues that are primarily caused by the need for visitors to contact the office by phone the next day to extend a reservation. Our proposals for change following our 1 to 2 years of committee work were presented to park leadership, to the staff, to the full advisory committee, and finally to the Baxter State Park Authority for approval. Last year, we changed the name of Duper to a Katahdin Trailhead Pass, or KTP, which really seems to have helped visitors understand the purpose of the pass. And Bryan will share more about that in later slides. The proposal aimed to discourage aftermarket sales of the passes, to reduce over-purchasing and waste, and allow more visitors to access passes. Bryan will also provide more information on how we achieve those goals, or we are working to achieve those goals. Last year's proposal also aimed to allow earlier access to non-Maine residents while maintaining resident advantages to purchase the passes. This year, our aim is to increase access to online reservations outside of the 4-month rolling window to minimize the need for calling the reservation office to extend and minimize leapfrogging. We also aim to bring a balance to visitor required calls to be more aligned with our available resources for managing incoming calls. And finally, to offer a more reasonable time of day for the opening of the 4-month rolling window in our online reservations portal, as we received feedback that 12 a.m. was not viewed as visitor friendly. And at this point, I will hand the presentation over to Bryan, who will provide more details and visuals of our enhanced reservations portal, and of course be available at the end to help with questions.
Thank you, Lori. So as Lori mentioned, one of the catalysts for change was when we studied the data as a committee, we found that there was a high frequency of misuse of reservation extensions, where people were making reservations at the less popular campsites in order to extend further to get to the desirable date or location for their desired stay, ending up canceling the preceding dates that they used to get an extension, which blocked campers from getting that timely and gave them that unfair advantage of getting to a desired date or location prior to the 4-month window opening. So part of our study, when we discovered that, was how are we going to address that particular issue to continue to keep equity across the reservation system for everybody to get access as best as possible for the sites and dates that they were looking for. So looking at our data, what we had found with this leapfrogging, as we nicknamed it, was that looking at data across the year, we found surprisingly that the majority of our campers were staying for 4 nights or less, to the point of 97.1% of campers were actually staying 4 nights or less, and the other 2.99% of campers stayed beyond the 4 nights. That is where, as a subcommittee, we thought would be a good cutoff point, being it's the highest percentage of campers, to allow for online reservations to be extended beyond the 4-month window. So what we had proposed and what we were given the go-ahead for from the full advisory as well as from leadership and our authority was to allow for 3 additional nights extension beyond that 4-month window as an online reservation. You can still call in to make a reservation. You can still mail in for a reservation, but extending beyond the 4-month window is now limited to those 3 additional nights. That doesn't stop campers from getting a full 7 nights in a campground. It just means that if they want to go beyond those 3 nights beyond the 4-month window, they just have to wait until the opening window for the rest of their trip if they want to go beyond that. This is a same site, same campground rule. So anytime there is a change in your site or your campground, that constitutes a new reservation and means that the people have to wait for the 4-month window to open for that change in order to make that reservation. This will not affect the 7 consecutive nights or 7 consecutive nights in a specific campground or 14 nights in the park as a whole. That rule has not changed, or that policy has not changed for us. We're just limiting how you can do the extensions beyond the 4-month window. And I'll show you in my examples as we get further into the slideshow how you can still reserve 7 nights in a row if it's prior to the 4-month window, or even 14 nights. So the other thing that we wanted to make sure we did not change was backcountry site reservations. So for backcountry sites, those are not affected by this rule. Sorry, I keep saying rule, by this policy that we've made that's in the software. Will not allow for folks to make online reservations for backcountry sites, for backcountry campgrounds, for accessible sites, group sites. That's how it's always been. That has not changed, but it also doesn't limit for backcountry or backpacking trips. It will allow us to make a full 7, 10, 14-day backpacking trip for a camper if that's something that they would like to do, with the restriction of once they hit a roadside campground or a backcountry campground, Chimney or Russell Pond, they can only stay 1 night as part of that initial reservation, and then they can extend at the opening window of further days in one of those sites. And I'll explain that a little bit better when we look at the actual reservation system. And as Lori said, the other change that we made was that the online reservations for that 4-month window will open now at 6 a.m. Eastern time as opposed to 12:01 a.m. to give a little more equity across the board for people to get access to those online reservations. I am using screenshots for this because I'm unable to open up the reservation system for a customer to make reservations, so I can show this to you live. Because it is live, that would allow people to start making reservations that they're not allowed to do yet. So I am using screenshots, so hopefully this will work well for you. And just as a aside, the dates that you will see on here, we do not have camping in April. I just used April as a month to get my screenshots, so that I didn't cause any issues with current reservations that people were trying to make. So in my examples here, you can see that this looks very similar as it did before. There are a few little changes. You can see that now we have this new orange icon on the calendar of availability. The orange icons are saying that there is a hold on this date because it's not yet available, so nobody can reserve this yet. The blue means it's available for online reservations, and the green in this example means that this is something that was selected for my account. I've chosen this reservation, and it's now in my shopping cart waiting for me to finish my reservation and make my purchase. So in the examples that I'm going to show you, my 4-month window here is for April 16th is the date that I'm trying to reserve. So 4 months prior to that, which would have been December 16th, I was able to make this reservation, and I chose that first day. By doing that, in the past, all I would be able to do is get that far. I'd have to call the office and ask the reservation staff to extend my stay. Now online, as soon as I choose that 4-month window date, it now opens up the following date, so I can add another day beyond the 4-month window to my reservation. Once I select day 1, if I want to extend further, it will open up a second day that I can now select if I want to go 2 days beyond the 4-month window. If I choose the second day beyond the 4-month window, it opens a third day and allows me to select a third day beyond that 4-month window. It will not change beyond that. It will stay orange, meaning that that date is not yet available for reservation. And you can see down here that I was able to select the 4-month window plus the 3 additional nights as part of my reservation, and I can continue with the process of purchasing those. Now, there was a question on, would this affect the ability to get multiple sites in the campgrounds or in the park at the same time? For example, I have a larger group that's coming in. My site only holds 4 people, but there's 8 of us that are coming. You are able to do multiple sites in the same campground or different campgrounds as long as they start on the 4-month window. You can extend beyond the 4-month window. You couldn't go, for example, from A-Ball in this example for a few days and then want to jump to Chimney Pond on a later date, you'd have to wait for that 4-month window to open for that later date. But if it was the same date, you could do I used Chimney Pond. That's you have to call for that one. If you were doing Roaring Brook, for example, you could go online, you could choose A-Ball for 4/16, you could choose Roaring Brook for 4/16, extend both of those beyond the 4-month window for the up to 3 extra days, and still be able to do that reservation. There is still the limitation of 12 campers that you can have in a single campground. That is what our limitation is, to preserve the natural resource. If there are groups of more than 12, so 13 or more, we do have group sites available that we require people to use when they're larger groups. And those particular sites cannot be reserved online. Those do have to be called in to make the reservation. So as I said before, if I wanted to try to extend beyond those 3 days after the 4-month window, I'm going to get this message if I click on this 4th day after the 4-month window to tell me that it's not available for reservation yet. That's what that orange calendar button is telling me. And if I try to click on it, I'm going to get this purple message. If, for instance, I decide, oh, you know what, I don't really need this day, the Monday, I just want to come in on Sunday, we're going to go back out, we're going to stay at the Big Moose Inn or something, and then we're going to come back into the park for Tuesday and Wednesday. If you were to uncheck a day after the 4-month window and make the rest of this non-consecutive, those non-consecutive dates will also be removed, because the allowance of going beyond the 4-month window is those nights have to be consecutive. So should you break that level of consecutiveness, if that's even a word, you will get this message here letting you know that any non-consecutive bookings beyond the 4-month window have been removed as well. Now, earlier I had mentioned that you can still do 7 nights as one single reservation. In this example, these dates here, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, are prior to the 4-month window, which means they're available for reservation because they've already opened. So I can book those, I can hit my 4-month window, and I can still go the 3 extra nights beyond the 4-month window to get 7 nights for that reservation. If I wanted to do 14 nights, I could still go backwards the number of nights that I needed, but still reserving the policy that they have to be no more than 7 nights in a single campground. So you could do 4 nights at South Branch Pond, 3 nights at Nassadnahunk, and then come into A-Ball and pick up the rest of the trip and get a full 14 nights in the park. But again, they all have to be dates that are previously open to be able to do that type of extended stay at roadside campgrounds, all at one reservation. Now for backcountry sites, let's just say, for example, you wanted to go to Upper South Branch for 2 nights, Pogie Pond for 1 night, and then Wassatacook Lake for 2 nights, and Center Pond for a few nights, and then stopping at Nassadnahunk. And you're going to just keep jumping from place to place. Because those are backcountry sites, and you're going to call the office to make that reservation, you do not have that 4-month window restriction on the backcountry sites. You could do your Upper South Branch for 2 nights, starting here if you wanted to, for 2 nights. And then we could let you, we could put you into Pogie Pond for a couple more nights beyond the 4-month window and keep extending it. Once you hit a roadside campground or a backcountry campground, Chimney Pond or Russell Pond, you can only stay 1 night. It has to be the last night of your backcountry trip before we have to stop the reservation because it's beyond that 4-month window. You can continue your stay when the 4-month window picks up for, say, day 2 at Nassadnahunk, or if you had gone to Chimney Pond and you wanted to go 2, 3, 4 more days at Chimney Pond, you just have to wait for that window to open. So you can bounce from backcountry site to backcountry site. When you hit a roadside, you can only do that 1 night before we have to stop. And then when the window opens up for the next night, if you wanted to continue, you could do that. If you're just doing backcountry sites, you can hop from place to place and do the whole reservation at once. Those are the major changes that we've made. So the biggest thing is that we're now allowing for folks to do their own extension of the reservation beyond the 4-month window, although it is limited to those 3 extra nights. It doesn't let you do a full 7 days beyond the reservation 4-month window. So that should hopefully alleviate a lot of the issues people have had trying to get through the phone, competing to get to us in time to get a specific site, etc., and allow a lot more flexibility for people. To touch on a few changes that we've made as far as the KTPs, just to touch on the successful things that happened in 2005 summer season for the changes that we made from dupers to KTPs. The name change that we made was to provide clarification, which we found to be quite successful with people. It made more sense. Most everybody called it dupers and nobody really knew what a duper was. And day use parking reservations kind of confused people as well. So as a committee, we discussed different names and threw it out there to different people inside and outside of Baxter, trying to come up with a name that would be a little more clear, landing on Katahdin Trailhead Pass. And some of the feedback that we received through the summer season, this past summer season, was very positive that it made more sense to people. We did still have some confusion as far as the reservation system on when they needed one and when they didn't, because the button, as you can see in the screenshot here, it was called parking. So people that were camping in the park that didn't even plan on climbing Katahdin thought they had to purchase parking, and they would buy a KTP, which tied it up from somebody else having one. Or they just were like, why did I buy this if I didn't need it, etc. So we tried to clarify that. So you'll see when you log in now that reservation button for KTPs actually says Katahdin Trailhead Pass. So it's more definitive to people, and those that are camping will be like, well, I don't need a trailhead pass, so they're not going to accidentally go online and buy one. We also made the changes of changing the ability to buy 3 per month for an account to 2 per month, because there was a lot of over purchasing and a lot of waste. We had a very high no-show rate, suspecting that was because somebody bought 3 passes in a month. They got a really good day to go hiking. They used that first pass. They didn't need the other 2, and they didn't call us to cancel them to make them available for anybody. So they just got wasted. So they were never used. Changing it to 2 passes per camper account in this past season reduced our no-show rate by 7%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but in the first year of change, that is a very large number. We went down a considerable amount in our no-shows, and it didn't seem to affect customers changing it from 3 to 2. We didn't have anybody calling with issues with that, so I'm not aware of it being an issue. And we had a lot of people able to get in on the trails without issue this past season. And then, as Lori mentioned, we opened up the KTP reservations to non-residents at the same time as residents. So April 1st, they will open for everybody. But non-residents of Maine have a 30% limit that they can purchase. There is no limit for Maine residents. So last season, we saw there were several dates where Maine residents purchased 100% of the KTPs. And there were other days where the non-residents purchased their full 30%, and there were still KTPs available on dates for Maine residents, even though the non-residents purchased their 30%. They could not get beyond the 30%. The remaining KTPs were for the availability of Maine residents, or if they were unsold, whoever was waiting at the gate to get access to the trails. So that proved to be very, very successful as well. So another change that I'm going to show you in just a minute, I'll explain a little bit before I get to the screen because the screen's a little busy, is we had a lot of confusion with people when they went to make their reservation. So when they clicked on the parking button and it opened up the availability calendar, had they not selected a vehicle, the calendar didn't show that there was anything available. So many people called to say they couldn't get a pass, when in essence, when we walked them through it and showed them how to select their vehicle, the availability appeared on the calendar for them. So what we've done now is we have changed the calendar availability to these orange color again to match the message that was always there, letting people know they need to choose a vehicle, but with a question mark. Previously, it was red with an X, which made it look like it was sold out, and it said there was nothing available. Now, hovering over this, it's not going to tell you there's nothing available. It's going to tell you to select a vehicle, which when you log onto the screen, your select a vehicle is highlighted at the top. If you do not have a vehicle already created on your account, there is also an option in there for you to create your vehicle. Once a vehicle is listed, the availability appears. So this will change from an orange question mark to either blue to let you know that there are spaces available, and you can click on it and reserve your 1 or 2 KTPs at that particular parking lot. Or it's going to show red, which means that it's sold out and there's nothing available. So hopefully that will help clarify for people as well, because that was very confusing for people last year. So we're hoping that this will make a difference as well. And we'll continue to do another year's study on the effects of the changes we've made to the KTPs to see what the impact of these changes have been, as we will do for the camping changes that we're doing. Those are the only 2 additional changes being made to KTPs, other than doing more education to make sure people are aware of how the KTP system works. And lastly, one of the things that I want to point out that we started last year, and we're repeating it again this year, is we added to our website under the Plan Your Trip section, where you would go to make your camping reservations or to purchase a KTP or Catan Trailhead Pass. You'll see there this What's New This Year section. And what we're doing there is we're listing any of the changes that have to do with reservations or projects that are going on in the park, or any education programs, etc. So folks can click on that and find out what is different this year than from last year. So information about the changes we're discussing tonight are all explained there. There's also a frequently asked questions section. So there's specific scenarios of different types of reservation questions that we've encountered, that we've explained how to make that reservation or how that will play out with the changes that we're instituting for this season. In addition to information on the website, there's also a link to a document here called the Baxter State Park Online Reservation System Updates, which walks you through each one of the changes and how to make the reservation. It gives an explanation, it gives screenshots to walk somebody through. So if somebody's not familiar with our system at all, and they're really confused by it, this will help them walk through the reservations with those changes and hopefully make that a little bit easier for them to get their reservation and to understand what changes may have happened. All of these recommendations, as Lori mentioned, came through the reservation subcommittee. They were endorsed by our leadership team here at Baxter State Park, the full advisory, and ultimately approved by the authority to go ahead and go forward with these. Our ultimate goal is to make sure that we're enhancing the visitor experience and always preserving the natural resource. So again, trying to make changes to make it accessible to all, but also protecting the park at the same time. And now we will open it for questions. I appreciate your time listening.
Thank you so much, Lori and Bryan. Really appreciate you sharing all that great info with us. We do have a fair number of questions that have accumulated, which we'll start working our way through. But if you have a question and you haven't asked it yet, go ahead and type it into the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen now, and we'll do our best to work through the list of everyone's questions. So first question, I'm going to actually hop down the list a tiny bit here. Can you explain why Chimney Pond reservations and other backcountry campgrounds are not available through the reservations portal? One person had a question about that.
I will do my best to answer that question. So our backcountry campgrounds are they're considered backcountry because you have to hike to them, so you can't drive up to them, but they are managed by rangers. So they are treated the same as we do for our roadside campgrounds. And the reason that we do not have them available online is there's certain conversations, because you do have to hike in, that we want to have with campers when they're making those reservations. We want to discuss mileage that they're going to have to hike to get there, or where they're going to be, excuse me, where they may have to park their vehicle, what the expectations are. For example, that they can't have any fires at Chimney Pond, that they can't put a tent outside of the lean-to as you can in some other campgrounds as long as it's on the hardened ground. So there's some different conditions in those particular campgrounds that we want to make sure that we discuss with people and not just assume that they know those things when they're going to be entering those areas of the park.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more? There was a question about extending backcountry trips, which you spoke about a little bit. And I think you partially answered this person's question, but if you wouldn't mind just describing a little bit the process for, say the 4-month window comes around for the first date of a backcountry trip. Just can you walk us through what that would look like?
Sure. So we'll say, for example, that the person wants to start their backcountry trip on June 1st. So as of February 1st, they can call into the office and they can request the sites and the dates that they'd like to go to. And I'll use the same sites that I used in my example. So they want to start at Upper South Branch for 2 nights. And then they were going to move to Pogie Pond for 1 night, Wasatacook Lake for 2 nights, Center Pond for 3 nights. And then they're going to end up at Nassadnahunk Field. So it's a total of 9 nights in this particular scenario. We'll just say they want 12 nights. They want actually 3 nights at Nassadnahunk. So I think that's where the confusion's coming in, is on when we get to that Nassadnahunk part. So because the backcountry sites, we're not implementing the policy for the extension beyond the 4-month window on backcountry sites, I am able to book all those nights at Upper South Branch, at Pogie Pond, and continue that backpacking trip. The reason that we chose to do that, and I'll go back to Nassadnahunk in just a second, the reason we are allowing them to go from site to site in one single reservation without waiting for the opening window is the difficulty of planning a backcountry trip and making sure that you're able to get from Upper South Branch to Pogie Pond. If we made it so that you had to wait for the 4-month window to open, the likelihood of somebody also getting Pogie Pond before you called in and got it could ruin your backpacking trip, because you're not going to be able to get to another site easily, or the distance is going to be too far. So in order to enable people to plan out that backpacking trip that's going to be trekking through the park from site to site to different places, we wanted to keep that safe and accessible and make it so that there was that interruption or break in the trip that would cause an issue, especially since they're going to be on foot when they're doing this. Now, when they get to the Nassadnahunk piece, because it is a roadside campground, we didn't want to say, well, you have to wait to end your backpacking trip by saying you have to wait for that 4-month window, and then the 4-month window comes and there's nowhere for them to go because somebody's already rented it by the time they call in. We're allowing them to get that first night. So they can end at Nassadnahunk, get that first night. And if they want to extend at Nassadnahunk, they would just need to call in or to go online. At that point, they could go online and do the next couple of nights that they wanted in Nassadnahunk to add to the trip. Because they're at a roadside campground, they're at a manned campground where there's a ranger available. They're not in the middle of the park in the wilderness where there is no access to people or what have you. If they do need assistance, they're at a place where they're safe. So we can kind of break their trip there. And then if for some reason they can't get day 2, 3, or 4, there are other options, or at least they're in a place where they can get access to transportation to get out, or to get whatever they might need because they have access to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And there's a few other clarifying questions coming in about backcountry trips as well. So just to clarify, say you want to have a trip starting August 1st, and backcountry trip starting August 1st, you can call April 1st.
Correct.
And book your trip out for how many nights?
You can go up to 14 nights. The limitation in the park is 14 nights.
Okay.
They can't stay more than 7 nights in a specific area. So yes, they can still do up to 14 nights unless they hit a roadside or backcountry campground. Then they stop for that 1 night and then they can extend.
So if you're wanting to start your trip August 1st, you can call April 1st and make your reservations for the whole 14-day trip.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And now I'm going to add to that, Aaron, sorry. On the other side of that, if they want to start, say they want to start at Chimney Pond and then move to some of these backcountry sites, they would do the chimney pond and then still have to wait for the 4-month window to open for the backcountry sites to pick up, and then they could go on from there, because they're starting at a backcountry campground or a roadside campground. It falls into that policy of the extension beyond the window.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Another clarifying question on backcountry. What if Russell is the middle night of an extended backpacking trip? Does it still only allow for one night? Are you limited to one night at Russell beyond the rolling?
You are, unfortunately. Yes.
Yep. Okay. So if you're wanting to get a jump on that and reserve it ahead of the 4 months, you have to limit your dates to the night. Okay. Thank you. Just going to move on to the next one here. We'll finish the backcountry thread here before we move on. What if a backpacking trip begins with a night at a roadside campground?
Right. I think I just explained that, but I'll say it again. So you can do your 4-month window and then extend 3 nights at the same spot. So you could do, say, Nasadnahunk. You're going to do backwards from what I explained before. You're going to start in Nasadnahunk, and you want to do that for 2 nights and then move on to Upper South Branch or wherever. I know that's probably way too far, but we'll just say that. So you can do those 2 nights. You can extend beyond the 4-month window at Nasadnahunk, and then you have to wait for the 4-month window to open to change campgrounds. But once you fall into a backcountry site, you can just extend.
Okay. And just to be clear, for the folks following this backcountry thread, this does not limit you to one night at Russell Pond on backpacking trips. This is
Correct.
only if you're trying to book your trip ahead of the 4-month window. After the 4-month window has passed, you can book as many nights at Russell in the middle of a trip as you want. And this is just if you're moving out ahead of that date actually being available in the system. Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. That was perfect.
Oh, yeah. No, good. All right. Great questions there on backcountry. Thank you, everyone who asked those. Can you describe, we had a question about mail-in reservations. Are mail-in reservations continuing as they always have?
Yes, they have.
No
and
changes
they
there.
are falling into the same situation. And we've already experienced it. So we've had some folks that were not familiar with the changes that were coming, and on their mail-in reservation request, they were requesting, for example, 7 nights at Daisy Pond. So we booked the 4-month window, we extended it out 3 additional nights, and we purchased that with their credit card number that they provided. And then on day 5 of their trip, when that window opened, we then would do 5, 6, and 7 and book the rest of the trip as long as it was still available. Where we do process mail-ins here in the office, we haven't had an issue with that. So it has worked out. But yes, mail-ins are still available and treated the same way.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So question about KTPs. If you're going to be using a rental car and you don't know the plate number, the registration, all that when you're making your reservation, can you walk through what someone?
Yes, that's an awesome question, and it's a big question we get a lot. So anytime you're registering a vehicle, you register the vehicle that you drive at home, and you purchase your KTP, and it's going to put your vehicle from home on it. And when you arrive at the gate, you let them know you're using a rental car, and the gate staff will update the KTP with the appropriate vehicle information.
Okay.
So whenever you register a vehicle, it's your true vehicle that you're using. There's going to be times where people say, for example, Lori and I plan the trip together. I'm going to use my vehicle, and we decide, well, we're going to use hers. I bought the KTP with mine. Doesn't matter. When we get to the gate, they'll adjust it to the right vehicle with the right license plate and make sure that it's reported appropriately. So you register your own vehicle.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Another KTP question. This person said KTPs are a great idea, but requiring us to be there by 7 a.m. Sort of defeats the purpose of them, especially for folks who live greater distance away. Any chance you could move it back to 9 a.m.? So could you maybe just discuss the timing there and why the park has settled on that, before 7 a.m. window?
I don't remember it being, I've only been here 3 seasons, but looking back at the history when we were doing the study and the analysis on wanting to make changes or needing to make changes, looking back at when this was developed, it actually was 7:15 was the cutoff, I believe. And they used to open the gate earlier so that people could get in even earlier. And they changed it to opening at 6 a.m., but leaving the cutoff time at 7:05. The reason it's at 7:05 is to make sure people get to the trailhead and get started on the mountain early enough. We do have cutoff times for the Katahdin trails that the rangers will let them know that it's really too late to be safely starting a hike, and discouraging that people will start after a certain time. So that is why we cut them off at 7:05, is to ensure that they're getting to the trailheads early enough.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I was involved in some of those conversations during the development of these. And yeah, if you're, especially in the fall, if you're not on the trail by 7, even if you are on the trail by 7, you're likely going to be finishing by headlamp and starting it later than that. You'd be doing a lot of your hike in the dark for most people. So yeah, it really is a safety guideline. So okay. Can you talk about, you spoke a little bit about the differences between resident and non-residents in the system. Can you just recap that for KTPs?
Absolutely.
And then, for camping.
Yep. So we did open the KTPs for non-residents and residents to purchase at the same time starting April 1st. And you can purchase a KTP as of April 1st for June 1st through October 15th. There's no 4-month window on KTPs. Once we open the KTP reservations, you can book 2 for June, 2 for July, 2 for August through, October 15th. The difference between residents and non-residents: residents have access to 100% of KTP purchases. So if Maine residents log in and Roaring Brook has, I'm just testing my brain, all of a sudden I just forgot how many they have. They have 30 KTPs available at Roaring Brook per day. So if Maine residents purchase all 30, when a non-resident logs in to buy one, there's none available. If there are tickets or passes available, non-residents can get up to 30% of those. Once that 30% cap is hit, and anytime a non-resident logs in to try to purchase one, it's going to show that there's nothing available. Yet a Maine resident logs in on that same day and it shows that there are some available, because whatever's left is for Maine residents. So there's no limit to Maine. Maine can buy all of them. If they're available when they purchase, they can purchase all 100%. But when non-residents, they are limited, and they did cap out numerous times throughout last season at that 30% limit. They wouldn't let them go beyond that. Did that make sense?
Yes, I think it did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We have a lot of questions here to work through. Thank you, everyone, who are asking these great questions. This is a technical question about the purchasing process. Will others trying to make a reservation see that the dates I'm trying to reserve have been selected before I cash out? Yeah.
Yes, they will. So as soon as, when you saw in my examples the green check mark, when somebody goes to look at that date, the check mark for them is not going to show, but they're going to see like a golden color with a pause, the 2 lines that looks like a pause button on an old VCR. It means that date is on hold for somebody. And once it's purchased, it turns red with a square like the stop button on a VCR, meaning it's no longer available. So yes, they'll see that it's on pause, that they cannot touch it. It's in somebody else's cart and unavailable to them.
Okay, great. Any additional considerations for commercial use reservations as part of these changes? Anything different there?
The commercial use policy I know has been under review. As far as reservations themselves, the policies that we've had in place before have not changed. So commercial users, the biggest change, I don't know if I should even say because we haven't finished it yet, but there is going to be a registration change for registering commercial accounts. But other than that, it shouldn't change the way they make reservations. They'll just have a separate commercial account from their private account.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. All right, a couple notes of appreciation for all the great info. Thanks, folks, who are sharing those. Okay. So what are the limitations about staying at the Wasatacook Lake Island lean-to and the lean-to at the western end of the lake? I think that's a general question. But any limitations there that folks should be aware of?
There is, and I've got to pull out my list so I can remember, because that's one I always forget. So Wasatacook Island does not open until August 15th, and that is because of nesting loons. And there is a 2-night requirement there. There's a minimum of 2 nights there.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Max of 2 nights. Right. Okay.
And the other backcountry site that we have limitations on is Davis Pond. And that one is, of course, I said it and I just closed the page that had the limitation on it. At Davis Pond, there's a 1 night limitation. They can only be there for 1 night. And that one doesn't open until June 1st. That does fluctuate depending on conditions in June. So if the site's actually inaccessible in June, it might delay, but generally we open that one June 1st, and there's a 1 night limit at Davis Pond.
And
no campfires either there.
Okay. And am I correct? We actually had a question about Davis, and that you need to stay at Chimney or Russell, correct? The nights before.
That's the same for Wasatacook Island as well. You do have to have a backpacking stay. So it can be Chimney Pond, Russell Pond, or any of the backcountry sites before you stay at Davis or Wasatacook Island. That is a requirement. Thank you for that, Aaron. I forgot about that.
No, of course. And the person who was asking about Davis asked why it was limited to 1 night. And
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not positive that I do, but I believe it's because it's so
remote.
Popular. Yep. And it's
and popular, right? Yeah.
Have an entire basin of Katahdin all to yourself. It's like having Chimney Pond solo. So and a lot of people want to stay there. Okay, great questions. So we had another KTP question what if someone doesn't own a vehicle and is only going to be using a rental to get to the park? Do you have any guidance? That's a
very good question. So what they would do in that case is they could call us and we can put a note in there for a vehicle for them. There still is the ability for them to write in like TBD or rental. We just discourage people from putting rental because we want to know where the car is coming from.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Or where the camper is coming from, or the hiker is coming from, I should say.
Okay. Another KTP question, and this is a common one that I know you hear a lot. Is a KTP needed for those who are in the park on a camping reservation, such as those camping at Kidney or Dacey?
Okay, so there's going to be 2 scenarios for this one. So if you're coming into the park and camping the night before, there's no need for a KTP. You can get up because you're already in the perimeter of the park. You have access to the trailheads. You could get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and drive over, even if you're not in a campground that has a trailhead. You could be at Nassadnahunk and you could drive to a trailhead at 4 in the morning and access the trailhead before we open the gates at 6. If you're checking in on the day you want to hike for your camping, you do need a KTP because you can't actually check into your campground or your campsite until 1 o'clock unless it's a cabin, then it's 2 o'clock. So you cannot check in until that late in the afternoon. Too late to start on the trailhead. So you would need a KTP to be able to access the trailhead parking to start your hike. Now, that all being said, if you were at the gate and it was after 7:05 and there was space available in the parking lot at the trailhead, they're just going to let you go in until that parking lot is full. So you would still have access at that point. But if you're trying to get in before 7:05 without a KTP, and you're just trying to use your camping reservation, you can't do that. You have to have a KTP or wait until after 7:05 to see if there are any no-shows or space available in the parking lots.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. A lot of good questions here. And I'm noticing the time. We're going to work our way through some more questions, but we are going to wrap up at 8. But if your question hasn't been answered and we get to 8 o'clock, don't worry. I'm going to copy them down after the meeting, and we'll work on writing some of these questions down and getting answers sent out to everyone who attended after the meeting. So, but we are going to wrap up at 8 o'clock in respect for everyone's time this evening. But thank you all for the excellent questions. We have a couple dozen actually still to work through.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So question about Chimney Pond. This person says, so in order to stay 3 nights at Chimney Pond, I would need to do each night separately on consecutive days corresponding to the 4-month window. Can you discuss backcountry campgrounds? And how those work?
Sure. So Chimney Pond and Russell Pond, you still have to call the office to make the reservation. And if we'll use the August 1st, calling on April 1st for that reservation, and you want August 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at Chimney or Russell. You call the office on August 1st, there's space available. You can do the 4-month window plus the 3 consecutive nights after, just as you could for your roadside campgrounds. The only difference is because they're backcountry, they're considered campgrounds within the restriction, not like backcountry sites where you can continue to extend. That's the biggest difference.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you cover the same scenario with a group site?
Sure. So group sites are in our roadside campground, so they do fall in the 4-month window with the 3 additional night restriction. But they cannot be done online. Those have to be done over the phone, again, so we can have discussions with people about parking, number of people, making sure everybody that has a vehicle has a copy of the reservation to be able to check in at the gate with, et cetera. So we go through a lot of information with them that's not things that you would typically need to discuss with people that are coming in for a normal campsite that's not a group site. So we do require that those are done over the phone as well, or by mail, and they can be done by mail as well.
Okay, thank you.
Or in person. I always forget in person because we don't see many people now that we've gone electronic, but you can do all of these in person as well.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yep.
Next question. If only a small percentage of people look to stay more than 4 nights, why close the opportunity to book a full stay for those who wish to stay more than 4 nights? So I think you want to talk about the leapfrogging.
Sure. Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, the leapfrogging is what instituted the change. So what we were seeing is folks would be looking to get, and I'm going to use Dacey Pond as an example, as I did in my slide, that they want to get a cabin at Dacey Pond on Memorial Day weekend. So they're not able to get a cabin prior to that because they're all booked. So they pick Nassadnahunk, for example, and they get the preceding nights. They pick, okay, so Memorial Day is the 21st, and I can do 7 days. So on the 14th, I'm going to call in and I'm going to do Nassadnahunk for 3 nights to get me to where I'm going to be able to get the weekend at Dacey Pond. Because we allowed for extensions to work that way, you could extend your 7 or 14 days. And then just before their reservation, 2 weeks before, they would call and say, well, we're not going to be able to come to Nassadnahunk, but we're going to keep the Dacey Pond portion of our reservation. So people that were trying to book and couldn't get Nassadnahunk because it was previously booked when they were calling in the past, prior to those 2 weeks before, lost out on the ability to book those nights because they were being held by somebody that were simply using it, or I shouldn't say simply, assumably using it to get the extension into Dacey. We were seeing a trend of that when we were doing our data research of cancellations and extensions, and that's what led us to having to make these changes to keep it as fair as possible.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another KTP question. Are KTPs only for parties climbing Katahdin? If you want to climb the Owl, for example, and you're staying at Dacey, or if you just want to climb the Owl, period, and park at Katahdin Stream, do you still need a KTP and do you need to be there by 7:05?
That is an awesome question. So if you're outside the park and coming in for the day and you want to go to the Owl, yes, you do need to have a KTP if you're coming in before 7 o'clock. If you're going to come in after and the parking lot's still available to get into Katahdin Stream, then you can park without a KTP and climb the Owl. Once the parking lot is closed because it's full, the trails leading out of Katahdin Stream are closed as well, which would limit you from going to the Owl. If they were camping in Dacey, as they said, they would be same as if they were wanting to go to any Katahdin trailhead, as they would be able to get up from Dacey, drive or hike over to the trailhead and hike from there, because they could get there before the parking lot closes, because they could start at an hour earlier than we open the gate.
Great, thank you. Camping, I think a camping logistics question. If a person's coming into the park for a 4-day camping reservation, say Kidney Pond starting on August 1st, they want to know what time they can come into the park on August 1st.
So August 1st, they can come in as early as 6 a.m. when we unlock the gates. They'll be able to come in. They cannot check into their cabin at Kidney Pond until 2 o'clock. But they can come in and utilize the park. They can go to Kidney Pond and park in the day use area and fish or swim or canoe or whatever they'd like to do, use other areas of the park, but they can't get to their cabin until 2 o'clock. And that'd be the same for campsites. Other campsites would be 1 o'clock, but same scenario for other campgrounds as well.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We have reached 8 p.m. So thank you all for all the incredible questions. There are just over a dozen questions that we didn't get to, so I will transcribe those. Lori and Bryan and I will work on typing in some answers to those, and we're planning to send a follow-up email in a few days to everyone who attended. So we'll plan to send out some answers to those questions as soon as we're able to pull them together and send them out to you. But I think that we're planning to wrap up now. Thank you all again for the excellent questions and for attending. Bryan, if you don't mind turning off your share real quick, thank you. We'll wrap up. I want to show a couple things on screen here. So if you have any lingering questions that you didn't get a chance to ask tonight, please feel free to email me with those questions. I'm just director at friendsofbaxter.org, and I will pass them along to Lori and Bryan. And we're also hoping to take some of the great questions that were asked tonight and make a little bit of an FAQ. If you had this question, chances are other people did too, and hopefully we can find a way to share that information with others who will be visiting the park soon and wondering the same things that you were. If you have other general questions that you wanted to ask, and I saw some great general questions being asked about checking out moose at Sandy Stream Pond and some other really great questions, I encourage you to pick up a copy of our Know Before You Go brochure. It has advice on great places to see moose, good hikes, all kinds of stuff that you need to know for going to the park. These are at park headquarters, visitor center. They're at all the state of Maine official visitor centers. There are 7 of them scattered around the state along 95 and other places. And if you want a copy, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to pop a copy in the mail to you. And we are planning to publish a 2026 edition soon that'll incorporate all these reservations changes that we just discussed. So as I mentioned, this was the second webinar in our winter webinar series tonight, but we do have 2 more coming up. On February 11th, we'll be hosting a webinar on the fossils of Baxter State Park, which are pretty incredible and globally significant. And our presenter for that session will be Sevi Aho, and she'll be speaking at 7 p.m. on February 11th. So if you can join us for that, we'd love to see you again soon for that session. And finally, the last one in our winter series will be on March 11th. We'll be hosting a webinar about the alpine plants of Katahdin and the other high summits in the park. You may know that Katahdin is home to the largest concentration of rare plants, rare and endangered plants in the state. And we'll be talking about some of the cool ones that you can see while hiking Katahdin. Presenters for that session will be Nava Tabak from the park and Andrea Terrell, who's a PhD student at UMaine. And you can register for those upcoming webinars on our website, friendsofbaxter.org/RSVP. You can find the link there to sign up. So many thanks again to our members watching tonight for making programs like this possible. If you're not already a member and you enjoyed the session tonight or found it useful, you can join on our website at friendsofbaxter.org. And huge thanks to you, Lori and Bryan, for taking all those questions, for sharing all that great info, and first and foremost, for all the really good thoughtfulness and hard work that went into making these changes to fulfill Governor Baxter's vision of protecting the park for the people of Maine. So really appreciate your
Aaron, thank you for organizing this and helping us get the information out to people. It's very helpful. I appreciate it.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And thanks everyone. So good night, and we hope to see you next time.